All right, whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready when do I click share the screen on my end
Yes.
or you're in?
Try that. Try,
Okay.
try clicking share.
I'm not used to being a guest, so
That's our guest of honor.
as it were. Share.
Perfect. We can see it.
Okay, let me move my here we go. I thought about this, and first, I'm Ira Serkes in Berkeley, California, and I'm going to give you a bunch of travel tips. And I realized I don't travel. What I do is I travel to create memories. And I thought of the Beatles song, "There are places I'll remember all my life." So, though some have changed, and the other thing that song came to mind is they can't take that away from me. And so I'm thinking is like Carol and I will be talking, and all of a sudden said, "Remember the fish soup in Brussels," or remember, some event that we both smile about. And I think that's what it's all about. And so my first question to you is, what are the places that you want to remember? And you can just speak up now. If you wanted to interested in wine, where would you go? Anybody?
Italy. Napa.
Art?
Italy in
Oh,
August.
yeah.
I have a list. Whole list.
Cherry
France.
blossoms.
France.
Japan.
Antarctica,
How about tennis?
Antarctica, Iceland.
How about tennis?
Wimbledon.
Wimbledon.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
any
I want
golfers
to
in
see the
here?
French Open.
Golf.
Oh, there you go.
Scotland,
How about
Ireland.
golfers?
Are we,
Scotland,
Any
Ireland.
golfers?
Yes.
are we talking where's?
Oh, just I want to give you trigger your ideas of where you want to go.
I'm going to
Because here's a
Japan.
photo.
Japan.
Ooh, yeah. Let's talk about that later. Here's a
Okay.
photo my brother sent me the other day. He for years I've been after him to go to St. Andrews, and this is apparently a famous bridge that Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods and everybody else walked on. Look at his face. He's never going to forget that moment. And that's the memory that I'm really talking about. So where do you want to go? We'll go specifics later, but these are a few of the places that Carol and I have visited in the past few years. Now, some of them we actually didn't visit, like this 1907 figure that shows up somewhere in the south of Greenland, but most of the other places we have. And I use a photo app to, every iPhone will geotag your photos. So if you want to remember where you were, or remember you took a picture somewhere, just go to your Apple Photos thing and search for places, because that will show you where it is. And that's what I did to get a lot of the photos that I did. And you could see we've been doing the hard travel first. We've been doing Kenya and Egypt and Jordan and India. And then we'll do the easier travel of the river cruises in Europe later, when it's just easier to do. So let's talk about passports and visas. First thing to do is, if you're planning a trip, take a look at your expiration date. There's a 6-month rule that says your visa, your passport has to be good for at least 6 months after the end of your trip, or else they won't let you board the plane. Now, I just renewed my passport. I wasn't in a rush. It took 2 months to do. You could probably get it expedited out a month or so. But first thing to do is to look at your passports. Get an RFID sleeve. That's one of these little plastic silvery things that protects signals so nobody can scan your information. If you have a credit card, chances are they'll reimburse you every 4 years for TSA PreCheck or global entry. And what TSA PreCheck does is it saves the line. It lets you in a shorter line. One of our credit cards also gives us Clear for $179 credit. And what that lets me do is, in case TSA is full, I have a backup for Clear. My feeling is we always try to get to the airport early, and that the cost and time, energy, and aggravation of having to rebook a flight it's much more effective to just have the tools or to get you into the airport early if there's a big line. Now, global entries on the return, I put my little stopwatch here, and it typically takes 2 or 3 minutes to get through immigration on return from an international flight. That could take many months to get an appointment. American Express will reimburse you the cost. And if you're planning any international travel, start now on getting appointments. For visas, sometimes you get visas on demand. Sometimes you can do them when you arrive. But look into visas and make sure that you check the timing, because some will start when you get the visa, and others will start when you first use a visa. So you don't want to do it too early. Credit cards. We've mastered the art of using credit cards to maximize points. Right now, we have about 750,000 points for travel. Travel and airfare has gotten much more expensive. But even still, I've got enough for at least 1 or 2 round trip tickets, business class for Carol and I, anywhere to go. When you do the credit card search, check for signing bonuses. You can typically get 50 to 100,000 points as a signing bonus. And you want to optimize the use, meaning what credit card to use when you use it, and also the use of how will you use those points. Now, some people go for rebates, and that's typically 2%, 2 cents per point. 2%. What I found is that we've gotten as much as 6 cents per point if I use it for travel. And I follow a Ward Wallet and the Points Guy to figure out what to do. I also set alerts for every single charge and for every single use of my credit card, because I once had 250,000 miles just fly away from me from my United account. And then I was able to get them back. But it turns out somebody had gone in, logged in, changed the email address, changed the password, and used all the points to get gift cards, which of course I would never do. For most credit cards, and when you have a card, split them up. I typically for my cards, my credit cards, my memory cards, backup drives, I split them up into 2 or 3 different places. I'll record the account number and report the phone numbers to call. And a Ward Wallet is showing on the right-hand side. For just about any charge, I click in who I'm charging it to, and it'll tell me which credit card gives me the most points. If you're going to spend the money, you might as well get more. For instance, Citibank will give me 5 points for every restaurant usage. And for about 3 months, Chase will do it on a Quest card. So I signed that up also because the Chase points are more use to me than Citibank, because Chase is affiliated with a lot of the travel airlines that I use. And speaking of airlines, we found, like, for Southwest and for Alaska, it's inexpensive enough to simply buy the ticket. So I don't use any Southwest credit card. I'd rather use another card that'll get me international travel. Now, we've always used insurance, and when I first got started, I was getting a policy per trip, and then I discovered Allianz will offer a 1-year annual policy. This is for the 2 of us. I'm not sure it's any less for if it's just one person, but included all trips for an entire year for both Carol and I, and COVID protection. It costs $1,400. Now, that's not inexpensive, but with airlines charging a lot of money now, if you end up have to rebook a flight, or you damage a rental car, or more significantly, you need emergency transportation to come back because you've become ill, for me, it gives me real peace of mind. So this is the type of thing I recommend everybody at least look into it. For suitcases, I've never been able to do carry-on only, because my carry-on is dedicated to computers, equipment, backup drives, and sometimes a change of underwear. And so we always have carry-on. I always have a backpack, and I always have a suitcase. And my ritual is to take a picture of our suitcases before we check them. And Carol has a nice selection, very colorful straps. I used luggage tag. You can see the Oaks Theater luggage tag. So I want pictures of what they look like in case something happens. And guess what? Something happened. Now for suitcases, I recommend air tags. And for things you wear, like your photo, your travel vest, my noise buster, my passport, I recommend air tags. On a backpack, I have an inflatable neck cushion and adapters and spare memory cards, and I have an air tag on them too. And on carry-on cameras, equipment, I put on air tags. So you're going to hear a recurring theme about air tags. And it's not just for cats. I put one on my passport holder. I put one in Carol's car. My Tesla doesn't need it because it has it. I put the very first tag I got was for Houdini the cat because we want to see where she is. And the last one on this screen shows Carol's large suitcase. And you're limited to 16 tags per Apple account. And it's pretty much enough for us and probably for most people. Now, I showed you the Find My Air tag, and now I broke it up. We arrived back from Italy and waiting for Carol's bag. You see a little icon of a dress, and it's not there. And then I remembered we have an air tag in it. So I looked at everything that we had, and our luggage and my vest and my suitcase are all with me. The car, Carol's suitcase, Houdini was 20 miles away at home because we didn't take it. And Carol's large suitcase was 5,585 miles away. So instead of waiting for hours, we knew it wasn't there. And so I said, well, where is it? And there it was in Charles de Gaulle Airport. And so we knew, we just logged it in. We told people it was lost or it hadn't arrived. And they said, okay, it'll come on the next flight. And so what I did is I searched the next day to see where it was. And I saw it was on an airplane. And then I went online and said, okay, which gate is that? And I saw that was indeed the next flight from Air France from Charles de Gaulle back to San Francisco. Now, we made one mistake on this one, is that when it arrived in San Francisco, I missed the alert and it went back from the luggage place to the airport, and it took us several days to get it again. But this gave us peace of mind knowing where it was and not having to wait for it. And so the air tags are really good. Now I'm going to quickly go into how long a trip do you travel for? And if we're talking about international, yeah.
There are a couple questions if we could before you
Oh,
move
good.
on. Joanne was asking, do you hide your air tag in the suitcase, or is it okay if it's visible?
The answer is yes. What I've done in the suitcase is they're hidden, but for several things I have, like my camera bag or backpack and my carry-on with the camera equipment, I actually put two air tags in them. One visible, which is a decoy, and the other one is inside in case somebody sees a decoy and steals it. I still have one in there. And that's for what I would call mission critical equipment.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't realize you could get decoys. That makes sense. I have a quick question. In your list of AirTag locations, you said noise buster. What is a noise buster?
Oh, I said noise buster, but noise buster is just like the Bose earphones that cut down on noise. I put it in my vest, and the vest is what has the noise buster.
Got it.
And you've seen me walking around in I use a photo vest, which I've looked at different things. The vest, not the vest. There's one guy that sells these heavy duty travel vests, but I found it weighs too much and it's too heavy. It's too warm for travel. So I actually use a light photo vest. Have we any other questions?
No, that's it for now. Thank you.
Okay, good. How long a trip? I was amazed. Our longest trip, this year, was 42 days. It was a long time. And we were traveling with friends the whole time. So it wasn't as long as it could have felt like. Our ideal trip, I think, turned out to be about 2.5 weeks to 3 weeks. And my feeling, if you're going internationally, your minimum trip should be about no less than 10 or 11 days. Because you take 1 day to get there, no matter how good you are, it's going to take you a day or two to kind of get over jet lag. So whenever I have to be somewhere, I always try to get in a day or two early. And returning is a day, and then the minimum trip is 7. So the ideal, I think, is a week and a half to 2 weeks. And I know for some people that's a lot. Some people 42 days is a lot, and it is for me. But we were in Turkey, Egypt, Jordan, and Israel, and it just made sense to do everything while we're there. So the first thing is kind of figure out about how long do I want to spend. And then if you didn't know I was an engineer, you'd certainly know it by now. I looked at Italy trip. We were invited to Napoli for a wedding where a landscaper married his boyfriend. And so we had a lot of places we want to visit and a lot of places we needed to be. We turned out it was easiest to fly in to and return from Florence for a whole bunch of reasons. One of which is also that we'd been there. So it's always nice to fly into a place you're familiar with so you're not feeling you need to rush out. And then I wanted to see where else we want to go. And I started figuring out, well, how long does it take to get from place to place? You don't want to spend 12 hours driving or traveling, but I broke it up into 2, 3, or 4 hour train rides. And I love a train. So then figured out, well, how many nights do we want to spend there? And that gave me an idea of how many days I wanted to spend and what the total was. So this trip was about 19 hours on the train and a little over 3 weeks in Italy, and that worked out. That was a nice sized trip, and we got to see a lot of places. The other thing that I did is I put a little table to kind of give me an idea, where does the day start, where does the day end, and where am I staying and what am I doing during the day. This is a quick overview, and I have other apps which are much better. Both of these I just simply did in tables on pages. It's really just a table and a word processing unit. I know one of the questions, well, do you take tours? Do you go by yourself? Do you do both? And the answer is yes. Click and Clack, the Tappet brothers on NPR had their chauffeur pick up and drop off. They would pick you up and drop you off. And what I love about the tours is I don't have to do anything. They arrange, the pickup, the drop off, where you're going to do. You can choose to join the tour for the day. You can choose to take off. It doesn't matter. We've had extraordinarily good experiences with Rick Steves' group and Odysseys Unlimited. Carol has a bit of a preference for Odysseys Unlimited. One of the other questions is, how do you plan where you go? And I think the easiest way is to take a look at the tour groups, even if you're not going to take a tour, and find out where they're going. And that'll give you ideas of places you want to cover. So we did a tour with Rick Steves and Odyssey Unlimited. We've done actually 4 with Rick Steves and 2 of Odysseys. And I know people don't often like tours, but we found it to be really good. And people of like mind. So Morocco, my friend Laura Duggan showed a picture of her holding a baby goat. I said, "Where the hell are you?" She told me Morocco, and I said, "Well, tell me more." And she sent me the link to a company, and she's gone to a different company, so I didn't link the company just yet. And I called her and I said, "I must be reading this wrong." And I said, "Is it really like whatever it was, $3,000 for 2 weeks, the 2 of us, with a guide, with the odds?" And she said, "Yes." Now, it might have gone up some, but I was stunned. So imagine you're in Morocco for 2 weeks with your own driver and a 4x4 and every odd and outside of the United States, every place serves breakfast. And it was just a wonderful experience. Manager safaris actually Maniago safaris. Laura Duggan and Austin's a great traveler. We went on a safari with her. She said, "Do you want to go?" And of course, my initial thought was no, but that was too big a decision for me to make. So I checked with a higher authority and asked Carol, and she said, "Oh yeah, let's go." So we went, and it was an amazing experience. You're never going to want to go to the zoo again after you've seen baby elephants in the wild. And coming back to jet lag, Kenya is pretty much due south of Istanbul. We've been to Istanbul before. So I actually flew into Istanbul just for a couple of days, and then head down south. You hit Israel and Jordan. So we went to Israel and Jordan for a week and a half, and then went to Kenya. And then on a return trip, a flight was delayed, and we actually had a couple of days in Ethiopia. For photo tours, as much as I like to take photos, I'm actually not crazy about photo tours where we're getting up early or staying up late and taking photos all the time. And what I found is that if I go on a Rick Steves tour, I can go ahead and wake up early or stay late and take the photos I want to do. For these tour groups, I think it's really important to get an idea of the size. Rick Steves and I think Odyssey's limits it to about 20 to 24 people, and they usually have a bus that'll fit 50, so you spread it out. The age, some of the times we've been with people in their 20s, early 30s. Realistically, most of the people are in the 50 to 70, and they're all interesting and nice, almost all interesting and nice, and it's good to travel with people. Now, I described hybrid travel, and that's where we hired a company and we did some on our own. So we went down to Chile for the total eclipse, and we hired an eclipse company. Then we went to Peru, and I hired Peru for Less to organize it for us. And they did the itinerary and the connection. They were incredible. And then I asked them about Ecuador, and it seemed more money than I wanted to spend for Ecuador, so we did that on our own. We went to northern India with Odysseys Unlimited, but I always wanted to go to Mumbai because of the Art Deco architecture. So we actually flew into Mumbai on our own, did our own tour. I hired private guides and joined Odyssey. And I realized the deciding factor for me is really, how do I get around? If a place has good public transit, like Tokyo or Japan or just about anywhere in Europe, I'm completely comfortable doing it. We tend to go into cities more than country. I've never rented a car outside of North America. I've driven in US, Mexico, and Canada, but I'm really not crazy about driving. I know a lot of people do, but I wanted to get around some places in Italy, and logistically you couldn't do it by public transit. So we actually hired a driver for the day. And that actually worked out really well because I didn't have to worry about parking or travel. And it was expensive, but car rentals in Italy, I mean, we were $300 to $500 for car rental. It made more sense to have somebody driving around. So that was good. I'm gonna pause for a second. Any questions, Laura?
Yes, we have the question from Mitra in terms of train tickets in Europe. She said 40 years ago, she had to buy train tickets here in order to travel between countries. The Europass, do they still do the Europass? Is that something you need to arrange ahead of time?
Well, the rail pass, I'm sure, and the same thing for Japan Rail. I'm almost certain you still have to buy those here if you want those. However, what I found is that it didn't because of the traveling we did in Italy, for instance, it generally, I don't think it really makes sense to get a rail pass. What we've taken to doing now is spending at least 2 nights, ideally 3, maybe 4 in any place. And so if you're doing a rail pass, it's good for a limited time. And we found it easier just to buy individual tickets. And I'll talk about that for a minute. It really, I think it's going to depend upon where you're going and where you want to travel. Now, when I went to Europe the first time when was it? 73, I'm looking at my poster from Prague. I was to present a hybrid computer presentation in Prague. Of course, then I got the student rail pass. But I'd look into it. I'm not sure it makes sense. Research. Musa on the line, I'm not sure. The first one I have is Helsinki train station by Ira Serkes. And what I'm always doing, I love reading travel books. I love, not travel book, guidebooks, and looking at websites. And I see somebody traveling and I post a photo and I'll add it to a database. So I do a tremendous amount of research. Generally, I like print, and I don't think I've ever written in a book. but I have kept 3M alive by buying a lot of Post-its. And then what I've taken to doing, once I see something, I'll put it into a database and then organize it by country or city. Being a photographer, I often plan trips around the phase of the moon. I like to be able to see the crescent moon, and so I'd go to time and date to see when the crescent moon of a new moon or full moon is. And then for research, I go to the travel forums. Rick Steves' Europe is great. And then I get a lot of digital guidebooks. Some I buy, most of them I'm getting out of the library, and then I take screenshots of the pages that interest me, and then I after those screenshots, I print them to a PDF and I put it into Evernote, which is what you see in the bottom right. Flights, connections, and changes. If you're making a connection, I really like to have at least 2 hours. I'd be perfectly happy with 3, even 4. Of course, things happen. Passport control, we went through Charles de Gaulle. It was at least an hour to get through passport control when we're sitting or starting to hyperventilate as everybody else in line. We made it, but I like to minimize the stress. Airport terminals, you need to be careful as to where you're flying in and out of, or which gate you're going, and how long it takes to get from one place to another. And once again, if you have just about any credit card, will give you a priority pass, and some where you can use the lounge. And some of them, like in Hong Kong, are just extraordinary. American Express has their own lounges. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense to seek out the lounge. We did that once in a domestic flight. We ended up walking like a half hour to get to the lounge. We were about 15 minutes. I had to walk back to the gate. So get the priority pass. I'm pretty certain you have it in your credit card. Pause for a moment. Laura, questions?
Yes, we do have a couple questions. Mai was wondering if, let's see her question. What do you think about river cruises in Europe? I know that you mentioned you're kind of saving that for later on in your travel,
Yeah.
but if you have any opinions on that, and there are a couple more after that. So we'll start
Okay.
there.
Well, first, I love the idea. We're going to do it. We've done several river cruises, not in Europe, but we did the Mekong River for about 2 weeks. We're planning one in which river? In which river going to Vietnam? I forgot. Another river cruise in Vietnam. And then I posted, Carol saw that the same cruise line, Pandaw, Pandaw, has one in India, and we're seriously considering that. So there are 2 issues. Here, let's see what we got. Pack light. I can't give you any advice on packing light. River cruises, I love the idea. I've not done them, but not because I'm opposed to them. It's just that I really love cities in the morning, in twilight at 5 in the morning, and in evening at twilight, and they typically, I think, would leave the city. So I think it's a great idea. I'm not philosophical opposition to river cruises, but we've not done it just because of the type of traveling we like to do. Big ship cruises, I'm the wrong person to ask. If I never go on a big ship cruise again, and I'll define big ship maybe as more than a few hundred people, it'll be okay. That said, if you're going to go to Alaska or even get a taste of Asia, consider it, but I'm the wrong person to ask about that.
Right. Makes sense. And then Joanne was asking thoughts on global entry versus clear. And Sophie has a related question. Can you emphasize more about priority pass on credit cards? How do I find this out?
Okay. So clear, it's an innie and an outie. Clear and TSA PreCheck are for leaving the United States and getting through the security check. Clear is parallel to TSA Pre. Global entry is for returning to the United States. They have some other flavors for Mexico and Canada, but it really makes sense to get global entry. Now you need to apply for that, and the interview process can take 6 months to schedule. However, global entry for $100 or 4 years includes TSA PreCheck. So if you're going to use it, don't just go for TSA PreCheck, for 75 or 80 bucks, spend 100 for clear and check your credit cards. Undoubtedly, if you have Chase cards and other cards, they will reimburse you for 100 bucks if you use the credit card to do it. You had another question that was related.
Yeah, Sophie was wondering if you could talk more about Priority Pass on your credit card.
Priority Pass. Yeah, a Priority Pass is one of the benefits that a credit card gives you. Priority Pass. Yeah, that's it. Priority Pass is the lounge access for arrival and departure. And the one we used in Istanbul airport was actually quite good. So simply check your credit card, or better yet, in my list, I have tinyurl.com, Serkes credit card tips, or I'll post it in a chat later, where I give you a bunch of tips on credit cards that'll do it. And if you use my referral links, we both get signing bonuses. And if the referral link doesn't work, let me know. But undoubtedly, if you have a credit card that's, a credit card that's not necessarily an airline card, you'll have Priority Pass as one of the benefits.
Perfect. That's it for now.
Okay. Disruptions. Once again, things happen. We've had everything happen to us. We get this nice post in Firenze, the Grand Hotel Cavour. We inform our guests that tomorrow and the day after, there's a national taxi strike. Now, if you're flying out at 5 a.m, that's not what you want to hear, because you can't even get public transit then. So pay attention to the little paper notices on the elevator. These are really important to spot. So we talked to the concierge, which I rarely use. I said, "Can you book us a car?" And she said yes, and it cost like $100. And it was the best $100 we ever spent, because they picked it up, dropped us off, and we were good to go. And we drove by people using public transit, and there were big lines, and it would not have been a pretty sight. Alitalia, I remember I talked about my connections. I booked Alitalia to Rome, and no, someplace to Rome, Air France, then Alitalia to Palermo, Sicily, with a 3-hour connection. No problemo. Well, that was the day before Alitalia went bankrupt or went out of business, and they changed the 3-hour connection to about an hour. And I said, there's no way we can possibly make that. So we lost a night's reservation and a flight, but we stayed in a hotel near the airport, right on the coast, right where the Tiber flows into the Mediterranean, and just got a flight the next day. Another one, when we were returning from Catania to Turin, our guide said, check in the night before, and I'm checking in and it won't let me. And I finally looked at it and saw that the flight that we had booked for 6 a.m. the next morning was rescheduled to 10 p.m. that night. And I didn't even know it. And so we had plan B, and that goes to the benefits of having internet access. So we rebooked a flight. We lost some hotel reservations, but we got to where we want to go. I just heard a horror airline story from Spirit Airlines. I think Spirit Airlines should be raptured and never be seen again. It's just like, I can't believe it would stay in business, but it does. And then we're in our Italy trip, not Italy, Eastern France with Rick Steves. We fly into Paris, spend 4 or 5 days in Paris, do the Rick Steves tour, end in Aix-en-Provence, and then make plans to take our own trip to have a hybrid trip to Arles and Avignon and Lyon and things, and Marseille. And once again, very dignified strikes in Europe. They will let you know when they're striking. it almost is bemusing. And so I said, let's go to Arles. Well, it turns out it was like $300 or $400 to rent a car to go to Arles. And I said, you know what? We'll just do it another time. So pay careful attention to these notices and sign up for what's a US consulate I'm looking for. Secretary of State. Secretary of State alerts. You want to make sure that you're safe and you know what's going on. My stress points are real simple. Whenever we arrive, whenever we depart, and whenever we transfer. And that's where I simply get anxious. Are you going to get in the wrong car? Or, and the consequences might not be very nice. So we found this guy on the left was Peru for less. Serkes time too. If there's nothing, I just look forward to these guys and take their pictures. So if you're in a place that you're not familiar with, that you're not going to take public transit, really look into the cost of paying whatever, anywhere from $30 to $50 to have somebody pick you up. And when we went into Mumbai, this was a trip that we came from San Francisco to Istanbul, which is a 12-hour flight, and then probably another 7 or 8 hour flight to Mumbai. And we're arriving at 4:45 a.m. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to be at my best. I have no idea what 18,000 rupees is. But I have to tell you, the idea of having somebody meet us in Mumbai at the gate, I'm not talking about, through passport control, but at the gate for 4:45 a.m., it was simply a no-brainer for me. And it's an other assist company that people use. So I would seriously look into, I recommend seriously looking into being picked up at the airport and transfers, because that's my friction point. Once I'm in place, I'm good. But, this is a place where I go, trains. So we talked about rail pass and Japan Rail. However, when you're traveling in Europe, there's no need for that. I had to get an American Express card to book on Swiss Rail. It was baffling that they wouldn't take American Express MasterCard or Visa, but I didn't know that. So I finally ended up getting an inexpensive American Express card at the time. Now get the app wherever you're going, any airline, any hotel, any trail. And on Trenitalia, the Italian rail, it could not be easier to book a ticket. You take a look at where you're going, and frankly, we've upgraded. We're now doing business class on the train, which costs more, but not that much more. Standard is €59. Business was €81. It's like, so it's about a third more, but worth it. And some of the business class, it was sold out. Area Silencio, quiet card. The quiet car, and that is really worth it. So what I did is I looked at which trains to do, and I've learned there's no point, unless you have to, there's no reason to catch an 8 or 9 a.m. train. Catch one at 10 or 11, so you can have a leisurely breakfast and check out. Book the ticket, and then once you book the ticket, if you're not, well, probably any train will let you select the seats. And what I do when I'm selecting the seats is I pay attention to where the sun is, because if we're traveling north, I'll want a seat on the right side of the train. And the reason for that, I don't want the sun blasting in or heating me up, and it lights the scenery that you're going on the right side. And then many places will let you move that to the your Apple Wallet. And I keep the old ones because it's once again a memory. And if I want to plan your return trip, we visited Gary Krieger and his wife in Ferrara from Bologna. And in doing so, we're going to have aperitifs. And I just said, I don't want to get back to Bologna too late. So it's 8 o'clock. So I worked backwards. And I think we did like a 6 PM or 7 o'clock train ride. So pay attention to your return trip because you don't want to be stuck somewhere without a ticket. Pause for a second, Laura.
Yes, we do have a few questions. Sophie was asking, and I'll go through all of them because some of them are related. Do you pay the drivers cash or a tip? The guys who pick you up at the airport? And how do you find a reputable driver if you're doing that? And Sophie also asked about keeping your luggage safe on the train. How do you do that?
Oh, good question. Well, the tips I'll usually tip. And for reputable driver, you have two parts. Leaving a hotel, talk to the concierge. You know, that's easy. Getting there, what I do is I go. I use TripAdvisor a lot, and I look for reviews. And that's actually where we went in Mumbai. We went to Dharavi, the slum, and slum in the United States has a very specific meaning and image. But if you've ever been to Dharavi, it's really an industrious city of people working extremely hard. And I picked the guide that lived there, and I told him I want to respectfully take pictures of people. I don't want to do it to exploit them. And he says, we will make it happen. So we check reviews and for drivers, I hired 2 drivers in Italy, one for two different days. I kind of look for reviews, I look for responsiveness. Keeping your luggage safe on a train, that's another friction point. And if you ever traveled with me, when we pull into a station, I'll usually get up and look at my luggage. It's usually at the end of the car. Ideally, it's with you, or you can put it behind the seat or under the seat, but I'll look at it. We've never had a problem. I've considered using locks, but I figure what happens if I got a lock and I can't open it and I can't get off the train. Other questions, Laura?
No, that's it for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now hotels. I use TripAdvisor a lot. And what I do is because we're out often early 5 a.m., I am out. I like walking around cities early. I like walking around in the evening. I'll always pick, if I have a choice, someplace that's central. And then I go to TripAdvisor, I look to see what's central. I see which hotels are there. And then I then check rates or I check stars. I'm not that interested in 5-star experiences. I don't value it as much as other people do. And I don't want a 1-star experience. I'm not in grad school anymore. So what I find is that I don't really search for 5, but I'll look at 5. I search for 4-star. And sometimes 3, but my sweet spot is a 4-star hotel in the center of the city. And then I look at the different places and I see if they have a terrace. So you see these 2 photos? This is the hotel we stayed in Florence. And I put boxes around different places. Top left is the Basilica di San Lorenzo where the Medicis are buried. Just north is the Cathedral of Santa Maria de Fiore, the Duomo. The Piazza della Repubblica is just to the left. The Palazzo Vecchio is just to the southwest, and the Ponte Vecchio is just to the southwest. So we stay in a place that's within 4 blocks of most of the major sites in Florence. And it had a terrace. So these are 2 photos I took from the terrace. And you've heard me speak about twilight, and my favorite time to take photos when the sky is still blue. And then if you're lucky, you might get a hotel that's got a hammam in Turkey, a Turkish bath. But for me, these are things I really like. And as mentioned, all the hotels they serve breakfast as part of a meal and as part of a service. And of course, they're going to be 4-star hotels, so they'll be safer and they'll have a concierge. Any questions about that?
We do have a question from Steve. What your experience has been with Airbnb versus hotels? He said he's now come to like Airbnbs, but he would love your thoughts on it.
Well, that's something Carol is not fond of Airbnbs. So what I've done is I've stayed in them a couple of times if I got a business trip. And I don't have any strong feelings about it. My preference, though, would be to stay in a hotel. And once again, it has to do with nothing more than friction point. I'm staying in Airbnb and something goes wrong, who do I speak to? Whereas stay in a hotel, I've got somebody to speak to. Now, that said, Jay Thompson in Texas has had some amazing Airbnbs he stayed with. And while I'm on Airbnb, let me talk a little bit about Uber. And I never was fond of Uber simply because I like to support taxis. But then I got to thinking about it, and once again, it has to do with friction points. You get into Uber, you get two-factor authorization. You know the car, you know the license, they know who you are, they check to see who you are. In some places, you have to put a 4-digit code, so that's a double handshake. And we've taken Uber now in Mexico and probably in Europe. I took it in India, and it was just the best thing because I didn't want to go to India because I figured it would be dirty and chaotic and overwhelming. And it was dirty, chaotic, and overwhelming. And it was wonderful. But when I went to get my SIM card, I walked for about an hour and said, I don't really want to walk back to the hotel. And the Ubers in the Taj Mahal, I took an Uber to the Vista Point. It's like $2. It was amazing. So I've become a big fan of Uber. So nothing philosophically, I'm opposed to Airbnb. I like to be able to have a pointed finger at somebody. Anything else on that?
No, that's great. Alicia shared that Uber changed the travel scene in Mexico big time. She uses a driver, or she used to use a driver there. Now she uses Uber. So yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, well, Mexico City is great for for public transit and stuff, but I would use Uber in Mexico getting around. Planning ahead, what you need to do is find out when places are closed. And this is analogous to the rail pass, because when I started seeing where I wanted to go, I found out that some places are not open on Mondays or Tuesdays. So that the Gaberte pass was good for 3 calendar days. And I had to figure out what day am I going to start it. Now, some things, passes usually start, you have to tell them the first day you're going to do it or use it first day. And so look into passes, which can be really useful, and book your tickets, particularly at Academia, to see David. People on long lines, we didn't have a long line. We had a booked reservation and we got right in. When you're traveling, your most precious resource is time. So don't waste your time standing in line. Oh, and coming back to that, the Rick Steve books are fabulous. I will always get a Rick Steves book for any place I go, because they really show you the places, that I like. I'm not looking for 5-star experiences or restaurants. I like local places and so if you look at me, I typically won't post a lot about restaurants. Because I like eating, but I don't want to spend 2 hours eating. I want to spend 2 hours seeing, and that's me. Now, credit cards, back to credit cards. You can get cashback cards, and typically will give you 2% back. So I was curious of the flights we booked, and I have no idea how to book flights on points. I've never been successful about that. I hire a guy to do it for me. But I looked at what the tickets cost, and typically a business class ticket per ticket is about $3,000. And then I took a look at how many points I use and what did I pay, either him or someone else. And so on average, I found the value of a point was 4 cents per point. And for Turkish Airlines, it's almost 6 cents per point. So for my personal use, it makes more sense to use it for business class. Once again, that's a personal choice. If if maybe that money's more important, or maybe you do a lot of travel to visit family on Southwest. For me, this is where we've optimized the cost. So we've saved on 3 round trip tickets $35,000, and it cost me $3,000 to get the tickets and just using points. Oh, and I'll never use points to buy something with. That to me is just makes no sense. Cell and internet access. I've gone through it all. The easiest is to use your current carrier and find out what services they have. Verizon came up with a monthly plan, $100 for a line per month, which is pretty good. After the first 20 gigabytes of high-speed data, you get 3G data, which is not fast, but it's pretty good. And so the easiest thing is to use your current carrier. No matter what you do, I recommend, if you have a phone like an iPhone 13, and I do not have a 14 because it doesn't have a physical slot. If you have a 13 or earlier, ask your carrier to move the physical SIM card to an eSIM, electronic SIM, and that frees up the slot. And then look into an international plan. That's the easiest. The fastest is when we were traveling to 4 different countries. I knew from experience I didn't want to be spending a lot of time looking for a cell phone carrier, particularly in places I really didn't want to be walking around by my own. And so I looked into eSIM, 2 companies, Airlo and Holofly. I can't give either of them a blanket recommendation. One was expensive, one was uneven. It would work on my phone, but not Carol's, or Carol's phone, but not mine. But what I would recommend you do is look into it, and if you're not sure, get the least expensive plan. And if it works, you can always renew it. The best alternative is to get a country SIM card. And what I've now learned is in Israel and Sicily and other places, and Italy, in Israel, it took me like 5 minutes to walk to the place. But typically it's a 2-hour process between finding it, walking there, having it done, bring a passport. Because it depends on whether you have time and how much time you're spending in place. I think if you get an EU card, it's probably good anywhere. But in Israel, we had 75 gigabytes for 30 days for $25, and that was high speed 4 and 5G compared to $100 for a month. And then hybrid is to start when you arrive with your current carrier, and Verizon gives you like 1 travel day per month, and then look into a country card. And the best tip I can give you is turn off all data usage, every single thing. Because there's so much going on your phone that is pinging. And the first time I used one of his cards, in about 3 hours, I used it all up because of the background stuff. So I do that at the airport when I'm, forward your calls. That was it. I forward all calls when I'm departing to a Google Voice. So my cell phone goes to Google Voice. Online backup. I'm pretty compulsive about that. All the documents, the passports, visas, flights, cars, travel tickets, PDFs, they go to Evernote and the small USB drives, and I carry a backup drive and a USB card with my passport, and another one I have on my backpack. And photos and videos should be iCloud, Amazon Photos and Videos, Flickr. I use online backup a lot. Apps, there are a gazillion of them. I'm just going to touch on 1 or 2. First is Google Maps. Download the maps, and I'll come back to that in a minute. The absolute best app I've ever got is TripIt. They have a free version, and then after using it for 2 hours, I paid $30 to upgrade it. You email the reservations and the PDFs to TripIt, and it integrates it, and it shows you what's where and activity, and it integrates in the addresses, the phone numbers, a website. You can add PDFs of tickets. It's amazing. And I get a lot of books. I tend to get books from the library now, and Libby will get you download PDFs. Google Translate, WhatsApp is a way of, it's a Rosetta Stone for communications. If anybody has a WhatsApp thing, you can call anybody no matter where they are in the world.
Mhm.
And Google Maps, I love this. I do a lot of research. That's top center of what I want to see. I remember that database. And then I download the map to my phone when I'm at home or on Wi-Fi, because then it stays local to your phone or your iPad. And then I'm not so much care about privacy, so I have it track me wherever I am. That's the little thing to the right. It pings and shows your route where you went. It's good for geotagging photos. And you can also revisit your trips. This shows the trips we took to Istanbul, Cairo, Aswan, Petra, Israel, Dead Sea, Agra, Northern India, Varanasi. So I'm gonna pause for a second. Laura, what's up?
All right, we do have quite a few little questions here. Mai had asked what your 3 absolute favorite cities are.
Oh boy. That's actually a real tough one. So if I can go past 3, I'll rattle off. And then maybe I'll go into countries also. I would love to return to Prague. I've been there twice. I'd love to return to Vienna and Paris and London. Tokyo fascinates me. We've been there several times. Istanbul is at the top of the list now. We've been there 4 times, and I don't expect to ever go back again, except maybe as a layover, just simply because I've been there. In the United States, it would be Chicago, Los Angeles, New York. I love cities. Portland more so than Seattle. Mexico City is kind of interesting. Montreal's cool. Philadelphia, New York. Then I'm going to branch into countries. If you're adventuresome, the countries I recommend to anybody would be Morocco, Peru, Turkey, perhaps Jordan, Japan, and Cuba. More questions.
Wonderful.
Oh, and if you're really exploratory, then India.
Mhm. Who do you hire for using your points to buy airline tickets? You had mentioned you hire somebody.
Yeah. I use a guy called Upgrade, Matthew Clint. And I like him. What happens, sometimes it's hard to communicate with him. But he forever has my love, because we were flying to Europe and transferring through Charlotte, and he said, I'm not by a computer, but I just heard 2 first-class spaces opened up if you can book it. So we went from business to first class at no charge, and I think he charges me, 150 or $200 a ticket, and I really like him. I'll give you, remind me, and I'll give you Matthew's name. That's one place. I've used some other places that advertise that they do it, but they really were. I didn't feel they were. I mean, I'm sitting in a very complex situation. I want to go from Tokyo to San Francisco on business class, and they're giving me trips that are economy or economy plus. It was like, it made no sense. I could do that on my own. And so I think the cost is worth it, because as much as I like flying Turkish Airlines, their website stinks and their customer service is worse. I booked on miles for me, and at the beginning it says, well, if you want to add someone else, go ahead and do it later. And I could never figure out how to do it. And then when I called them, nobody could. Basically, we're sorry, goodbye. And then when we ended up booking the ticket with Matthew for Carol, I said, well, she's in one seat and I'm in the other. We're on the same plane. Can we just get them side by side? No, you can't do that. You have to do it at the airport. It's like, it's just really weird. That said, Turkish Turkish Airlines, I really like it. It's not quite as exciting as it was the first time when we had a whole business class cabin to ourselves. But unless you're really good at this, I would recommend hiring somebody. And I don't think a travel agent necessarily would want to do it. Travel agent's good for planning, but for flights, you'd have to check. More questions?
Okay, I think the other questions can be answered during our discussion period. I would love for you to go ahead and finish your presentation.
Okay, if I can.
Right.
Social broadcaster receive. If I'm posting photos of a trip, I'm at home. And this is simply one of philosophy. If I'm broadcasting, it's fun to share and get tips from people, but then I'm spending time, away from me. I'm not spending my time doing what I did to travel there. And so I'm in receive mode. I'm there. World doesn't need to know I'm not at home. There's privacy issues and I can share them later. So that's why you'll rarely see me posting when I'm here. It's a giveaway. If I'm traveling, all of a sudden I'll go dark. Equipment, air and a spare, just like Harry used to be. I bring a computer because I do a lot of photos. I move things to memory cards and backups and USB drives and tablets. I download movies and podcasts, chargers and cables. In India, it was the most extraordinary security thing I've ever seen. Our boarding pass got checked like 5 times. And so on the next trip, I got clear plastic bags to put everything into because they took everything apart. And I'm going to do that forever. And so where do you want to go? I think I'm probably wrapped up. There you go, I did it. What are your tips? Let's talk. So do you want to stop? Thank you, Marianne.